Kings and priests and friends. Kings. Isaiah says of the suffering servant, "Kings shall shut their mouths because of him. For that which had not been told them they shall see, and that which they had not heard they shall contemplate." We heard last night the refrain, "Servants are not greater than their master." So consider some of the servants of the king, some of the servants of the Roman emperor and the imperial government that we just heard in this Passion Gospel. Begin with the detachment of soldiers, the military who coordinated with the temple police in a tactical raid to arrest a preacher. And then consider Pilate, the governor of Judea, who bowed to political pressure and for expediency released a convicted killer and sentenced an innocent man to death. Or the soldiers at the headquarters of the Roman garrison who beat and taunted and humiliated an innocent man, parading him around in a purple robe and crowning him with thorns to double his shame and humiliation. Or the emperor himself, whose hold on power depended on brutal efficiency and military might. Or consider the soldiers at the cross, who shared their sour wine with a dying man, and who did not break his legs to hasten his death, because he was dead already. Kings shall shut their mouths because of him, for that which had not been told them they shall see. Kings and priests. We heard in the letter to the Hebrews that since the law has only a shadow of the good things to come and not the true form of those realities, it can never, by the same sacrifices that are continually offered year after year, make perfect those who approach. And every priest stands day after day at his service, offering again and again the same sacrifices that can never take away sins. We heard last night the refrain that servants are not greater than their masters. So let's consider some of the servants of the temple hierarchy that we heard about. The police from the chief priests. The temple police, who came with lanterns and torches and weapons and a SWAT team of Roman soldiers to arrest a preacher. They bound him and took him to Annas, the father-in-law of Caiaphas. Annas questions Jesus, and his police strike Jesus for blasphemy. He has him bound as though he were dangerous and carried off to Caiaphas, the high priest that year. Remember, it was Caiaphas who advised that it would be better for one person to die for the people. And the chief priests themselves, who complained, "Don't write King of the Jews, just write that he said he was King of the Jews." And then who shouted to Pilate, "We have no king but the emperor." Kings and priests, priests and kings, upholding the law, administering the law, enforcing the rule of law, executing the sentences of the law. But the letter to the Hebrews reminds us that the law can never, by the same sacrifices continually offered year after year, make perfect those who approach. Kings and priests and friends. We heard last night the refrain, "Servants are not greater than their master." But Jesus went on to say more. After he had shared a meal with us, after he had washed our feet as an example, after his betrayer had gone out from among us, Jesus said, "I do not call you servants any longer, for servants do not know what the master is doing, but I have called you friends." In today's online meditation from the Brothers of the Society of St. John the Evangelist, we read this: "We are invited to take our stand at the foot of the cross, joining the small company of Jesus' friends who are already gathered there. We stand there together under a dark and threatening sky to witness the suffering of our Savior, to be with him in his hour of immense pain and desperate need." So consider the small company of Jesus' friends. Consider Peter, whose early morning bluster and bravado and swordplay in the garden earned him a silent rebuke from Jesus. Consider Peter, who was undone by a servant girl's questions, who denied his friend before the sun even came up, but whose confession would become the rock on which Christ could build his church. Consider Mary, who with her sister and 2 other Marys stood at the foot of the cross, all of them pierced through the heart for the Son and Master they had loved, but whose faithfulness, whose persistent faithfulness, meant that they would be the first witnesses to his resurrection. Consider the disciple whom Jesus loved. Most of us know that it was John, the gospel writer. Consider that disciple who could not only bear witness, but could bear up his friend's mother in her grief, laying her head on his breast, just as he had laid his head on Jesus' breast last night. Or Joseph of Arimathea and Nicodemus, senior members of the council of the temple leadership, who had much to fear from the chief priests and from their brothers on the council, but who stayed firm in their resolve to do their part. Kings shall shut their mouths at Jesus, for his gentle power undoes their shows of force. And priests by their sacrifices can never take away sins, for their law of might betrays their true allegiance. But let us, the small company of Jesus' friends, the Master's friends, let us hold fast to the confession of our hope without wavering, for he who has promised is faithful.